goal, Chris Billy, Huddersfield Town. The most famous goal of Chris Billy's life.
Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town.
Ruby and Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the frame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted.
Mustafa Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
And welcome to episode 131 of the Andy Takes That Chance podcast. I'd like to start with a poem that I shamelessly stole from the internet and hacked at to make an intro that no one will enjoy. But here we go. He's born of questionable heritage. They say he never knew his dad. He's unscrupulous. He's wrong again. It makes me all quite mad. Of course we know he's colourblind, which is worse than it might seem. The only colour that he sees is the shirt of the other team. A further complication which is difficult to hide. Although he sees through both eyes, he can only see one side. He has trouble with his learning, he never knows the rules. And he thinks that we can't spot it because we're 15,000 fools. A very serious character flaw when the game is very tight. He doesn't get that booing means he hasn't got it right. If I was to perform like he at work, I'd surely get the sack. I am, of course, talking about the bastard in the black. There we go. So how are we doing, guys? Let's draw a line under that. These things never go great, do they? And I'm not bitter at all, am I? I think Preston fans might have been cursing something similar on Wednesday, and maybe Stoke before that. But on with the show, eh? Joining myself in the middle this week is a man who is used to copping stick. It's Simon Copland, a gent still grinning after the final whistle of Town's 1-0 win over Barnsley. It's the K-maker, Andy Kaye. And making his debut, showing a pathway from the comments section to the main screen. He's got a six-pack on Twitter, and now he's ready to open his own pack of whoop-ass on the pod. It's Jonny Gillespie. How are we doing, guys?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah, all good. Good. Jonny, you're new to the pod, so welcome aboard. I think it's always good to start, isn't it, with a little bit about you. So tell us how you got into supporting Huddersfield Town and a couple of your favourite moments. Well, I just alter Andy's screen there for a second. Go for it, mate.
Yeah, so it was a question, do you like football, by my dad? Yep. And then that's where the questions ended, because there was no question about who you were supporting. He's like, right, we'll come down to Huddersfield then. So my first game was Norwich, 1995-1996 season. I think Andy Payton scored the winner for Town. I was more interested in my post and Pat book, I'll admit, at the time. But yeah, since then, been hooked ever since. Favourite moments, I mean, I to try, like, you got the cliches, obviously the Cardiff, the Wembleys. I don't think anything will quite top. Wembley, obviously, with the Reading game. Probably a bit of a niche moment for me. My favourite moments were at penalties. My dad couldn't hack it. Goes into the toilets. Obviously, we win. Comes out. I'm about 2 seats down as he comes out the door, and he runs up and to the right. So, gone to football all these years, my dad. As we're about to win, just got promoted, and he runs off in the direction. I don't see him for 10 minutes, so it's kind of a bit of a novelty family moment. But yeah, Town through and through, and always will be.
Good man. Also online, if you let us know if we've got any sound issues. We haven't got Pozza on this week. He's apparently has been. Well, Pozza is actually the tightest man alive, so he's actually gone out with his missus for a Valentine's meal tonight because it's a lot cheaper than going out on Valentine's night. So there we go. So that's Poz through and through. Apparently it's a bit hissy, which I think is probably down to my audio actually, but I will try and fix that. Oh, there we go. I can fix that if I move this very gently, and hopefully that stops. I'll sort that in a minute anyway. So welcome to the podcast. Welcome to everybody watching online as well. So thanks, Bez, for letting me know about the hissing. Promise there's no snakes on this podcast. But I think what we need to do first is go on to and say thank you to our sponsor, which is Magic Rock Brewing. So Magic Rock sponsor this fine podcast, and what finer place to go for your pre-match drinks than Magic Rock Brewing in Birkby, or even Home Firth if you get the train across. If you want to buy some Magic Rock goodies online, you can use AHTTC10 and you'll get 10% off at checkout, which is fantastic. And Jonny there, our new model, is also modelling some Town Lager, so get yourself some of those. There you go. And also you can get these pint glasses as well, so there we go. So thanks to Magic Rock for making things happen. Right then, guys, Huddersfield Town 0, Sheffield United 0. Let's jump into this one first while it's freshest in our minds. The Preston one was a bit of a damp squib, I thought, so we'll move on. And that's a damp squib, Andy, not squid, as a lot of people do commonly say. Right, Town 0, Sheffield United 0. What I found the most interesting about this game, I thought this was a really good tactical battle. What I really enjoyed was Huddersfield. What Carlos tends to do is he tends to employ this system whereby there's two different formations. There's an out-of-possession formation and there's an in-possession formation. In possession's either your 3-4-3 or a 4-3-3/4-2-3-1, depending on who's in midfield. And then out of possession, we wrap round into a 5-4-1. What he's been doing recently, prior to the Sheffield United games, it's usually Sorba Thomas who drops right off to form part of the back five as a right back. And then Turton, if he's playing right back, just comes inside slightly. Or if we're playing a back three, Matty Pearson does that inside job. But he actually changed it for this game. He's noticed that Jonathan Hogg, we have been... with regards to Hoggy, maybe we're a little bit hard on him sometimes, but that's because we love Hoggy and we know how good he's been for us over the years. But he's noticed Hoggy has been dropping deeper in games. There's a few games where he's dropped way too deep, and that started at the start of the season. Against Sheffield United, he was very deep, but he's actually used that to great effect in this game. So he's used Hoggy as a bit of a halfback, if you like, or if you like, in the back five, he's become sort of a libero, which is the old, Andy will remember because he's old like me, the old Lothar Matthäus kind of thing, where they would sort of start at centre back and they would dribble out into midfield. So I found that, being the nerd that I am, quite interesting and quite good to watch, and I thought that worked really, really well. And Pippa, who tucked in at right back, his speed on the break really helped with Sorba Thomas, and we saw a lot of really good combinations down the right hand side between Pippa and Sorba Thomas. And I just thought, in terms of tactics from the off, I thought Carlos got this really, really spot on, and we saw some really interesting additions as well. We saw Josh Ruffles coming from Harry Toffolo. I don't think anyone saw that coming either, but for my money, Josh Ruffles performed like Harry Toffolo. It was like you pretty much plugged something out and plugged something in, and it worked just as well. And that was really good. And that's no slight on Harry Toffolo. It's more credit to Josh Ruffles for coming in from the cold, making his championship debut, and really sort of switching in particularly well. And John Russell as well, we'll talk about in a bit, and he came in and he played in central midfield. I thought Town played really, really well, and I think we're probably going to have to come on to Town's first half performance, and in particular the disallowed goal. I know I've done that silly poem at the start, but Andy, the disallowed goal was complete bullshit, wasn't it? The corner comes over, Big John gets up, heads it, Danny Ward gets hauled down. He falls in West Fodringham's path. West Fodringham falls over. If he doesn't get hauled down, Danny Ward, hands up, it's fine. But he gets hauled down. And for me, it's a completely ridiculous... I know people will say things even themselves out over the season. We had some decisions before this. I think that's the most untrue thing in the world. The previous 8 seasons, Huddersfield Town have been shafted by referees on the scale of decisions. So, I don't believe that for a second. But it's a shocker, isn't it, mate?
It's awful. It's awful. But the fact that every pundit that you've seen across the universe has agreed with that statement just says, I don't know what else there is to say. It's so blatantly a goal. It's just beyond me. But if that fool Holloway on Quest agrees that it should have been a goal, then for me that's the most obvious refereeing error I've ever seen. I don't know who's made the call. Is it the linesman? Is it the ref? Because the ref's almost running off as Russell's headed off to the stands. It looks like he's turning away and he's happy with the goal. So, what was he looking at? He must have been following the ball. I think they've followed the ball. They've looked over. They've seen them in a heap on the floor and presumed that because the goalkeeper's not been able to get to the ball, there must have been a foul. Therefore, we will give a free kick.
I think the liner gave it. I think you're right, Andy. I think the linesman gave it because you see the referee and he walks back to the centre circle, doesn't he? And then you see John Russell celebrating. Everything's great. Everything's wonderful in the world. And then it flashes back and he's turned around full circle. I think the words come from the linesman. And, if Danny Ward doesn't get pulled, he's right. So they've obviously missed the pull on Danny Ward. Johnny, a frustrating moment. And then, you talk us through that. And I thought it was a stonewall penalty on John Russell afterwards as well. John Russell's getting set for a repeat, isn't he? He jumps in the air. The guy, I can't remember who it was now, just grabs him by the arm, doesn't he? And then John Russell does his little pirouette in midair. I'm frustrated watching that. Tell me how you felt.
Yeah, I think it's Bogle. Don't quite think it's Bogle that grabs him, but yeah, I mean, I must admit, first thing I do when Town score, I kind of have a bit of a cursory look at lines and could be caught out so many times celebrating. And like you say, I saw the ref turn and start to run back. So, and having watched the play, you can't see any obvious reason as to why. So I actually jumped on the Town Twitter to see. I couldn't sat next, but I couldn't work out why. He said it was a foul by Danny Ward. But I think you've analysed it absolutely spot on. I don't think the ref can't be looking, because if he's looking, you'll see the foul on Danny Ward. He's following the track of the board. The liner gives it for offside. As me said, that was a pen. I mean, how kind of non-blue and white glasses can you get there? But yeah, I must admit, in live play, I didn't really clock the foul on Russell. I was probably still infuriated by the original decision, but watching that back and watching the highlights back again, absolutely clear as day. Penalty, pulls him, drags him round. He's going for the ball. So sometimes if he's away from the ball, they don't always give it. So two clear penalties there. And I know, like I say, a few people might come and say, well, you've had the look elsewhere, but it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't affect the quality of the refereeing, which is poor, and it's frustrating. And it's potentially 3 points that would have could still make a huge difference.
Simon, I don't think there's much more to add, is there, other than that? But just tell us through the first half, what you're, and tell you what, lead us into discussing Big John Russell as well. Big John, he made his debut, didn't he? Championship debut, I should say. Poz said last week, and quite rightly, not to get too carried away with John Russell. He's a young lad. He struggled to properly cement his place in the Accrington Stanley team last year in League One. It's hard. You can see why people are getting carried away, though, can't you? Because his line passing to break the lines was absolutely outstanding. As a number 6 against Barnsley, and again, we've seen him play maybe as an 8, possibly today. Sort of a hybrid, if you like. He was the deeper one when Hogg dropped back in. We were slightly worried about his lack of pace, but he reminds me a lot of. It's like a hybrid between. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember Darren Pratley, who used to play about 10, 15 years ago. He was a really tall, rangy midfielder, probably a bit more mobile, Darren Pratley. But there's also shades of, don't laugh, but there's also shades of Marouane Fellaini in him as well, showing that he's a really good aerial target, and he uses his elbows and knees and width to really great effect, and that it's so difficult to get the ball off him. And he's come into enormous credit. I do worry a little bit that Huddersfield fans are maybe building him up a bit too much. I think he's probably winning the Player of the Season award so far, if you do a count. But it's really good to see, and it really vindicates the chance and the policy that Huddersfield did at the start of the season to take, released players and place them in the B team and give them a little, spit shine TLC. And it's really paying off, isn't it, Si?
Yeah, it looks a really astute signing at this moment in time. I think what I quite like about him is his athleticism. He's kind of a big, strong presence, something very different to what other options we've got in midfield. To your point, looks like he can play a number of different roles, whether that be kind of as a deep lying defensive midfielder, a little bit similar to how he did in the cup game, and confident at this level. I think in the cup game for me, he was a little bit sloppy in possession at times. I think kind of against better teams, he'll need to kind of hold on to the ball much more. But it's quite harsh to be kind of critical at this stage, so kind of early on to his career. You also drawn some comparisons there. I think kind of I've seen comparisons drawn with Phil Billing as well. I think that's probably a little bit around his kind of height and physicality, and
not really similar for me.
But no, a really good option to have, and one I think we'll probably see quite a lot between now and the end of the season.
So we'll go into the second half as well. I think aside from the disallowed goal, Town didn't really create many clear-cut chances, did they, from memory in that game? For me, the second half, Huddersfield continue. I thought Sheffield United, the stats are, for Sheffield United, they've scored a lot of second half goals and, a lot of late second half goals of Sheffield United. So the longer it went on 0-0, the more I was slightly worried about how this might play out. But Huddersfield, again, were excellent for my money in the second half, tactically very good. Pippa this time into the box, gets taken out by 2 men. And again, shithouse James Linnington gives nothing. And, James Linnington, it's really bad when I know a referee's name, but I know full well James Linnington and Jeremy Simpson. These are two names which, if I hear these, the red flags go up. And the reason James Linnington's name is synonymous with me is travelling all the way down to Reading and him sending Rajiv Van Lepara off after 20 minutes for getting fouled in the promotion season, in the 16-17 promotion season. I've never forgiven him for that. I should really let things go, shouldn't I, Andy? I should go see a counsellor maybe and learn how to let some of these things go. But he for me is a really poor referee. That, again, is a stonewall penalty. You can see he's got a really good position. There's no excuse, again. And we'll talk about decisions that have gone our way in previous games when we come around to the Preston game. And I'm very aware that, things have gone our way in previous games. But in isolation in this game, it is just another terrible decision from a referee. Pippa, you can see the contact. You can see Pippa's ankle get wiped out by two players. And it is just the most... If that's not a penalty, I genuinely don't know what is. It's frustrating because 4 points from Preston and Sheffield United would have been an outstanding week for us. And we sat here on 2, going to Fulham thinking, we might need to get something there to, keep up this top 6 push. And it's frustrating, isn't it, Andy? That's the end of it, for me. That it's very frustrating. There's 3 decisions. Apart from those 3 decisions, the referee, there was a Sorba one where Sorba got absolutely bundled at the start of the second half, which was another blatant foul that he didn't give. But apart from those, he was fine. But the thing is with referees, you need to get the big decisions correct, especially when the cameras are on you and, Joby McAnuff's going to dive into you after the game. Joby McAnuff's great, by the way, on Sky. And, it's really, I'm just frustrated. I'm still frustrated the day after. It's a penalty, isn't it, Andy?
Well, I think so. And we were obviously down the other end of the ground in the cowshed, and we were almost in a direct line to it. And both me and my lads, so that's a penalty, and the subsequent expletives that I'm not going to repeat on here certainly came from my mouth, certainly not my son's, but questioned the referee's heritage and parentage and all that type of stuff. I just wonder whether Pieper's a victim of his own. He's got pulled up for diving before, hasn't he? There was one where he nutmegged somebody down at the cowshed and then dived. So I'm just wondering whether he's got a little bit of a reputation. Referees talk to each other. Watch out for that lad there. He'll do this, that, and the other. But yeah, 3 pretty clear penalties for me. But,
we did ages ago, Andy. We did a podcast with Bobby Madley. When he was on a holiday over from Norway, and the amount of work that goes into refereeing is phenomenal. When he went through it, he used to say, I analyze everything that the opposition do. He watches how they pass, what moves they're going to make, everything that every player does. So he knows what to do, when the game's flowing, so he knows whether to play on or whether, to give a foul in certain circumstances. So they try their best to understand how every team plays. So you're very right. It could be that Pippa is deemed to be light on his feet, which I can't really remember him diving much, but I do have blue and white glasses, so, there is that. But yeah, I think you're right there. There could potentially be, a reputation that follows him around. But for me, that was more of a penalty than the John Russell one. But the man of the match.
I think you're right.
Go on, Johnny.
So I was just going to say, I think that out of all 3 is the worst one because the ball's at his feet, and I'd say it's what I call an easy penalty to give because it's a clear foul. You can see it. I sit in Old Money, the Lawrence Batley, and that's still quite a distance away from it. You can see the foul. And for me, I'd find that the most frustrating one because that's where his eyes should be. That should be his focus. There's 2 men, and he goes down. And I see what Andy's saying. There is a little bit of a Spanish flail, let's call it, but it's still. I can't understand what his viewpoint is, and what really infuriates me. He does a ref kind of the get up, and But you'd love to ask these questions, referees, but we can't.
That's the thing. They can only give what they see, can't they? And only on what they think. And I'll never sort of fully dive in. If the referee is 100% convinced of a decision, then, fair enough. But he's got 3 big ones wrong here, which of course, Huddersfield Town, to not win a game, I think they deserve to win on the balance. I know potentially we maybe didn't create an awful lot. I think we've had 3 shots on target, haven't we, in the game? So maybe we haven't created, people will say maybe we haven't created enough anyway. But Sheffield United are a very good side. They've won 7 out of 9 coming into this. And what I was really pleased with was how we made them look quite ordinary despite this run coming in. And I think the team and Carlos deserved enormous credit for the way that they set the team up, the way that they played. The role of Hogg was really important. I thought Hogg was outstanding in this game. But the man of the match for me, and Sky agreed, and I've looked at the fans' ratings at the Examiner, and I'm absolutely perplexed how he's only got a 6.8. For me, Sorba Thomas was outstanding, and it's really and I think I'm giving Carlos credit for this, because it's the system with Jonathan Hogg dropping into that 5, which has then meant that Sorba Thomas hasn't had to wrap around into right back, and he's maintained a higher position in the pitch. And what Town have done through either Russell or Lewis O'Brien. Lewis O'Brien was excellent as always. I think Lewis O'Brien, for me, is head and shoulders our best player and player of the year this year. But he sets a bar so high that everybody just goes, yeah, he was all right, 6 out of 10 when he's been when he's been really good. But Sorba Thomas being higher, really, he was really, he could isolate one-on-one. He was skinning people down the side. He played a couple of excellent diagonal balls through for Pippa as well. I thought he was tremendous, Sorba Thomas. I thought he was fully deserving the man of the match. I know John Russell was excellent. He got it in the ground, didn't he? He did really well, especially in the first hour. Sorba, Tom Lees, a lot of fans giving it Lee Nicholls, but apart from the one amazing save we'll talk about in a minute, I thought Sorba for 90 minutes was outstanding. Anyone want to back up my Sorba claims? I'm going to have to change this. Josh Karoma, I'm sorry, Josh, but you didn't play particularly great at the weekend. We won't go too much into detail, but this is close to being a Sorba Thomas contra rather than a Josh Karoma one at the minute. But guys, tell me, Sorba, amazing season, and his passing accuracy. What I think reflects this is Sorba Thomas's passing accuracy is usually pretty crap. I'll be honest. It's usually around the 50% mark, and that's because he's trying to constantly do things and pull strings and play passes that maybe won't always be successful. And I think he's got license to do that. But his passing accuracy was 85% on Saturday, and that is the best he's had for a long way. And it shows how good he was and how accurate he was. And someone take over, because I'm setting up my own Sorba Thomas fan club here. So someone come and join me. Someone sign. Come and join me. Go on, Andy.
You know that I love the guy.
Is he sponsored by? Is he sponsored by AKLD? That's it. Yeah.
Let's get that out there. I think he could have been better. There were a couple of things that the guy walks on water for me. He's absolutely amazing. Love him to bits, and he did play really well. But there are a couple of things I think he could have done differently. But I think he's been given the instruction to get the ball into the penalty area with these crosses. Flat, low crosses almost every single time. And there were a couple of times, particularly second half, where I just wanted him just go for it. Get in the penalty area yourself and see what happens instead of going bang and getting the early ball in. So, it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? So, he's trying to get it into Danny Ward, and I understand why. Just wish sometimes he'd just go, I'm good enough to take this on my own and really commit their defenders, maybe draw some towards him so Danny Ward's got a bit more space. And I think he needs to, whether this will affect his speed or not. I can't remember who was marking him, whether it was Robinson, the fullback. Sometimes when the ball was going up in the air, and I know this isn't his forte, that's not what he's there for. He was almost picking Sorba up and moving him to one side and then going and clearing the ball. I think he needs to be a bit more physical and a bit more arms and just maybe bulk up a little bit, because it was so easy to get out of the way. And as a fullback, you love it when you can just give somebody a little bit of and they're not there anymore. So, yeah, brilliant. I thought Russell was man of the match. I was amazed when I heard that Sorba had got it off Sky, as well as he played, absolutely. But I thought Russell was the man of the match. And I don't know whether it's just me wanting a bit more from mine and my son's favourite player by an absolute mile. I just think he's set such a good standard. I think he needs to add a little bit more now. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh and a bit demanding.
No, I see that. I know what you mean, because there were like 3 or 4 occasions where he got down the right and he put the same ball over, didn't he? So I know what you mean. There were, and Johnny's nodding, he can take over here, but there were a couple of occasions where maybe you're right, he had beaten the man and maybe he could have drawn another one before, playing to the edge. But this season is a learning season. It's his first full season in Championship football. So we'll all forgive him for that for sure. But I thought it was great. But Johnny, let's have another voice on this and let us know.
No, well, yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think I find myself, when you see him, when he matches up against the fullback, I find myself saying beat him because he can. I don't know whether that'll just come with a bit of experience. Like I say, is he a victim of the high standard that he's set, similar to, like you said, with Lewis O'Brien. But I think often or not, he strikes a fear of God into players. I know when the preview of the Sheffield United person, the expert who you most worry about, Sorba Thomas. And I think because maybe it's a tactic, maybe like I say, it's instruction to get that early ball in, which we've seen work. We've seen Ward capitalise on that. I think sometimes you just needs to not necessarily play with more freedom, but just recognise actually the better option is for him to beat the man, maybe get a bit closer to the byline, or maybe kind of do what he did at Blackpool and do something really special and capitalise himself. But like you say, he's a real talent. I think you're right in what you say about Hogg sitting, takes that pressure off and gives them a bit more freedom. Again, I thought he played really well, and like I say, I can see why he was given the man of the match. But I know we are going to come on to that. I again, it's the debut kind of the debut start, but I think Russell was exceptional. He was my man of the match on the day.
Go on, Si. Who are you giving it to? Just to see if it's 3-on-1 or 2-2.
One. I mean, I think.
Back me up, Si.
I think you can make arguments for someone like Josh Ruffels. I think obviously that's because, to your point before, Mike, he's not played at this level previously. For us Town fans, at least, there's probably a little bit of trepidation there, apprehension, kind of seeing him come into the team, not showing how he'd fare at that level, and he did really well. I think obviously you've kind of highlighted Hoggy having a really good game actually, and kind of being back to kind of or a game that really suited his kind of attributes. Russell that kind of Andy spoke about, and Sorba. I'm probably going to go for Russell, but kind of not by much. The one thing I would say, Matt, and kind of maybe this will be a nice follow-on, is you mentioned before that Lewis O'Brien was your player of the season to date, and difficult to argue with that, but I do think Lee Nicholls for me has kind of been one of, if not the best kind of goalkeepers in the Championship so far this season. The consistency week in, week out. He's not made an error.
Well, let's talk about that save. Let's talk about that save. Seeing as how Phil Senior sacked us off this week. Me and you have both played goalkeeper at a dodgy level, haven't we? But I think what you kind of do, what you kind of do as well is when you make a save. A lot of goalkeepers, I used to try and do it, although I had really short legs, and I'm sure I remember. I think you did it as well. When you make a save and you know it's spilt, you swing your legs automatically, don't you, as a kind of sweeping mechanism. And I thought that's what he did. The save is phenomenal, because I sat here a couple of weeks ago and went, yeah, Lee Nicholls is having a great season, but he's not really made any saves where you go, wow, that was amazing, because his positioning is so good. It's almost like Ian Bennett that we had, a long time ago. His positioning is so good. He knows where the ball's going before the striker does. It's a real skill for a goalkeeper to have. And up to the Swansea game, I was like, well, he hasn't made any saves that I probably wouldn't expect him not to make. But that Sheffield United one was an outstanding one, whereby you go, do you know what? I thought that was in. Everyone thought it was in. The touch is brilliant. And the technique to swing it away as well is intentional. It's honestly, it's outstanding. That he made a save against Swansea as well, which I thought was phenomenal as well. But
I just think for me, Matt, it's so much more than that. I think kind of the way the save in itself is superb. Kind of put to your point, the best save he's made this season. But I think
it's the calmness, isn't it, as well?
But week in, week out, kind of the consistency there, the positioning. He's not spilled anything. I think the defence have got so much confidence in him. His game management, and maybe it's a reflection of kind of
shithousing. Don't forget that shithousing as well.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, obviously it's a stark contrast to last season when there was kind of 3 different goalkeepers, none of whom kind of inspired any confidence whatsoever, and kind of were error prone. This year, very much chalk and cheese, but player of the season, hands down for me so far.
Yeah, I
100%.
Yeah.
That save was Lossell at Chelsea-esque for me. Little fingertip onto the post, gets away. But the thing for me, it was horrible conditions for a goalkeeper. I've never played in goal ever.
Not tall enough, Andy. Now I've seen you, I know why. You're not tall.
You realise I'm actually a complete short ass.
Yeah.
And his handling when the ball was coming in, the wind swirling around, the rain's all over the place. A number of times he just come and claimed it and then done something good with it. A couple of times he got rid of it and it went into touch a couple of times. But other than that,
he's like Spider-Man, isn't he? He's just honestly, I'm going to start. I started calling him the Big Easy because he's big. He's a big guy, and he just makes everything look really easy, doesn't he? He comes out and gets things which, so like Danny Ward was a really good goalkeeper for us, but Lee Nicholls comes and gets things that Danny Ward would have struggled with. Maybe not now, but 2016, 17, and it just makes everything look so easy. And I do think that, and I'm trying to word this in a way which is probably not too unkind on everyone involved, but I think Ryan Schofield struggled so much at the end of last season. He set the bar and the expectation level for goalkeepers so low that Lee Nicholls has sort of catapulted over that now. And I think a lot of the reaction that he gets is due to how low the bar was. Whereas what I mentioned before about Lewis O'Brien was he set this bar up here and he's meeting that. So he doesn't get as much noise, if you like. Whereas Lee Nicholls, because the bar was down here and he's up here, I think he deservedly gets a lot of praise. But I think part of it is because of the previous incumbents, shall we say, in many ways. But he has been outstanding. Andy, you're right. It's the things that things stick in his gloves, which is just like when the cross came in. I think we were who did Barnsley. There was another corner came through. Sort of in the last 5 minutes, and he just came out. Like he was taking his dog for a walk and caught it. And if a goalkeeper does that in the last minute, it just takes so much pressure off the fans, off the defence, off everybody. And it's a real sort of skill just to make that look so easy. And Lee Nicholls for me he's 100% in the top 3 players of the year, maybe top 2. And he has been outstanding. I think he does deserve a lot of this credit that's coming his way. And Johnny, you've not said much on it, but it is a pleasure, isn't it, just to have someone whereby if the ball comes in the box, you're not sort of hiding behind your seat going, "Oh, what's going to happen here?" You just sort of like yeah, whatever. Nicholls is going to grab this. It's whatever.
You're absolutely right, and I think going back to the point you made earlier that he might not have made any kind of worldly saves. In a way, it's kind of a compliment. The fact he
it is, yeah. I was trying to paint it as that the other week, and everyone was like, "Matt, you're wrong. He makes amazing saves." I'm like, "Oh God," but yeah, it's his position, isn't it?
And it's like you say, it is his position. And there's a chance in the first half. I can't remember. It comes from you're back to the cowshed. It comes from left hand side in the first half. He's arching, but he grabs it and he holds it, and it doesn't. It looks subtle. It looks easy, but it's his quality that makes that. And like you say, coming up for crosses early, claiming them, his defence knowing that's going to happen, and them having the confidence that's going to happen. It removes all the situations of having to make reaction saves or having to kind of come and scramble, because the ball's already been bowled out to Sorba 20 yards up the pitch. So that's the quality that he's got, and it's made a huge difference. And like you said, he couldn't get the MK Don bench last season for reasons unbeknownst to us. Something might have gone on there as well. But when he came in, I know there weren't people kind of doing a dance around the streets, but it just shows that right players at the right time at the right club with the right kind of atmosphere that we've got now really can excel. And
he loves it. He loves it.
I say go on to better things, but I don't mean that.
He's fine where he is. Yeah,
but he does, and like you say, yeah. But he's become a bit of a cult hero, like the bookings and the. Do you know what I mean? There's
people sticking on every week, 14-1, isn't it? 14-1 booking every week. Lee Nicholls, get on it. Brilliant.
He encapsulates a lot of what's right at the club at the moment.
And he cares. He absolutely cares. He loves it, and he's forever turning to cowshed and trying to get a bit of atmosphere when he comes on and gets people going. There was a bit towards the end that. I'm not that great of memory of what went on, but I think it was when they had that scramble and Danny Ward blocked it twice.
Danny Ward was outstanding there,
and he was just like that at the end. And I thought, I love that. I love that he's representing my club with a passion and an energy that maybe we've not seen for the last 5 or 6 seasons, maybe 2 or 3 seasons. And that makes such a difference. You'd forgive him almost letting him one go through his legs in last minute to lose a game. But probably won't forgive him, but you know what I mean? Because he's got that relationship, I feel that, it takes some doing. And Schofield's had a horrible 12 to 18 months. I just hope that lad gets better, gets fit, and we can get him out somewhere where he can build his confidence and learn his craft again, because ultimately that's what you want. For me, Huddersfield born and bred, playing for Huddersfield Town. So I would want him to be our long-term number 1 goalkeeper. Whether that will happen because of things that have happened so far, I don't know. But ideally, that's what I'd want, because there's a goalkeeper in there. He's just lacking confidence.
Right, guys, you ready for something negative? It's all been sunshine and I almost said sunshine and lollipops. Then it's all been sunshine, roses, etc., rainbows. But as much as I thought Carlos set us up wonderfully, and I really like the tactics deployed, I thought he made a mess of the subs. I'll be honest. I thought he made and he took Ruffles off. I understand why Ruffles might have gone off. Lack of game time, and he brought Sinani on, which is a forward-thinking move, isn't it? But he put Lewis O'Brien at left back, and he's done that quite a lot. It's not a new move. Lewis O'Brien's played that role quite a lot, and he does it often when we go 4-4-2. When we're chasing a game, Lewis O'Brien will go overlapping from the left-hand side. But it was I thought that was a wrong move to make, and his Sinani was fine. He was okay, but it just sort of exposed that side. Ruffles was having a really good game, and what Ruffles was really good at was blocking crosses. It's a real sort of bugbear of a lot of people that fullbacks don't block crosses, in this day and age. But Ruffles was really decent defensively. And Sheffield United visibly got in down that right-hand side quite a few times because Lewis was trying to push too far forward. And it really disturbed the balance. And I don't think the balance needed to be disturbed because we were on top in that game. And I know Carlos is looking for the winner. Credit to him for chasing the 3 points, and not just settling. But that first sub didn't work. I don't think Lewis O'Brien does work at left back a lot, in these teams, especially when he's running the midfield. Taking him out of midfield to go left back. I just didn't like that when he did it, and it just really sort of alters. The Dwayne Holmes sub was great. It was fine. Josh Koroma wasn't playing well. Josh Koroma needed to come off. It wasn't his day. There was one particular incident which I think everybody was head in hands with when he cut into the centre and he had 2 men free and he tried to take an extra man on and shoot, and it was an absolute mess. But we still love Josh Koroma, obviously, don't we? But the last sub, he wanted to bring Rhodes on as a forward, but he needed then to take Danny Ward or take someone off to redress the balance on the left hand side. So he brought Toffolo on. So really, it was like 2 subs wasted and 2 rolls of the dice. I know I've given Carlos a lot of credit lately, for subs that he's made. I think they've been really good, but this one, I just thought the first one was. I'm not going to go too hard on him because he's done a lot of great stuff really well lately, and the subs against Derby, for example, were good. And he's really improved in that. His in-game management's really improved over the last sort of 6 months. But I just thought that one was a miscalculation, and that kind of swung the momentum a bit the other way to bring Sheffield United into the game. And maybe it's not something Carlos will repeat. I don't really know where I'm going to go with that. I just thought it was a bad move. I don't know if anyone agrees with that. Go, Jonny. You're sort of looking.
No, I think it was, and I must admit, I was really confused by it. And I think immediately after Lewis O'Brien took up that kind of left back role, they got in a few times down that right hand side, and that's nothing against Lewis O'Brien, but it just took me right back to last season where he did have to operate as a left back, and he probably admit himself he didn't have his best performances in a Township. He probably had some of the worst performances in Township because he's not a left back, and you can try and. I guess I've not watched the post match. I don't know if anyone asked him specifically about that. But I guess the reason why he wants to do that is to kind of create a bit more more attackers on the field. In possession, Lewis O'Brien can push up and operate down the left-hand side, like you said. But out of possession, it didn't work. And then, like you've alluded to there, it cost us a substitute. And like I say, Rhodes was strict, was ready to come on. Maybe we're going to keep both strikers on, which I think would have worked well. And we could have done that given how Sheffield were lined up. And yeah, one substitute didn't work really. The other one's there to kind of try and repair the damage that had been done to get Lewis out left back and bring a recognised left back on. And you don't know, but I agree with you that had you been able to get Rhodes on the pitch and keep Ruffles on, who I thought had an excellent game and didn't seem to be blowing or didn't seem to have an injury, things might have been different. Yeah, I think if you've got to give him credit for previous decisions and obviously the starting lineup. But in that, looking at that isolated incident, I did think that costed him. It could have cost us more dearly if some of those chances or crosses been in better that got past Lewis down their right hand side, down our left hand side.
Anyone else want to jump in? Simon, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I can see that the logic there. It's kind of he wanted to introduce an attacking option in Sinani. Who did he withdraw? Not Sorba, he's playing well. Dwayne Holmes has just come onto the pitch. Danny Ward, figurehead. You then look to the 3 in midfield, and you've got Johnny Hogg doing a very specific role. Russell having a really good game. And O'Brien's been so good this season that you want to keep him on the pitch. So you kind of want to impact the game through your substitutions, and you kind of then default to kind of the easier option, where actually taking off Russell, taking off O'Brien, arguably the braver move and would have been more in keeping with what he was trying to achieve. And but I don't think the fans would have reacted particularly well to that either at the same time. So I can see kind of the thinking behind it, but kind of it did expose us, like you say, and kind of thankfully no damage done really.
Yeah, we ended up in like a 3-5-2 shape in the end, and with Russell and Sorba Thomas up front, and I could see he was trying to get Sorba up front to be, on the counter and try and get Sorba sort of isolated, one-on-one against him, which is fine. And John Russell ended up there because of his height and his threat in the air. So I understood why he would do that. Not bringing Rhodes for Ward would have been, the likely sub, and we've seen how Jordan does as a solo striker, but you throw him up with John Russell and you never know what happens. Maybe that's something to look at going forward. John Russell winning the first and Jordan Rhodes, sniffing around, and maybe that's something Carlos has got in his locker for later on. But yeah, for me, overall, good performance from us. Didn't quite get what we deserved on the day. 4 points from those two games would have been absolutely phenomenal, really, and really set us up going forward. So, am I disappointed? No. Am I really pleased with the performances from Huddersfield Town? Yes. But there's just that nagging thing which sort of says, do you know what? It should have been 4 points this week. Andy.
Maybe we should, but I think one of the things that I did a little bit of, one of my real good mates is a Blade, and we'd obviously been having the usual banter via WhatsApp before the game. I looked on the Twitter Blades hashtag after the game. Not everybody, but a lot of that was, well, that's a good point earned away at a club that's fifth, that's in the playoffs. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, and I did a bit of research. Their squad's worth 85 million quid, and ours is worth 34 according to that transfer market thing. They come down from the Premier League, they've struggled. And a side like that, a setup like that, a club like that is saying that's a good point gained away at Huddersfield Town. Roll back 12 months, roll back 2 years. We'd have absolutely snapped anybody's hands off for clubs like Sheffield United to be saying that about coming to Huddersfield Town.
It's a real capped offer, isn't it?
Yeah, it's incredible that we are where we are. The thing that, and I forgive Carlos for trying something with his subs.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't think he got it right, but at least he's tried something. One of my complaints about him previously was that he didn't try anything. He just stuck to his game plan and that was it. So he's trying stuff, which is great. Yeah. For me, it's about now. We are safe. We are completely safe. We're in the last 9 of the FA Cup, not the last 16, the last 9, because we're the last tie to be played. So we're in the last 9 of the FA Cup. Come on, let's have a go. In cricket parlance, let's set some attacking fields. Let's get some quick bowlers on. Let's get 3 slips and a goal. Let's just give it a go. And that was the thing that was frustrating me a little bit on Saturday, that we didn't, I don't know whether we fully believed or fully felt like we got something that we could hit them with. We've got an absolutely brilliant opportunity to get this club back up into the Premier League. We could, but if we continue to perform like we have been doing over the last couple of games, I just see us sadly falling away. Let's take some risks. Let's try something. Let's go to Fulham. Well, we always get battered 5-0 at Fulham, so you can write that one off. That's happening anyway, no matter what we do. But in some of the upcoming home games, I think we've got to be brave and just go, right, we're just going to give it everything we've got. We're going to attack, because we need, maybe another 25 points from how many games have we got? 14 games left. Something like that. I think 16, it's about average 75 points to get in the playoffs. Yeah. Let's give it a go.
I know what you're saying. I thought Carlos did try and win that game. I thought his alterations were definitely one for attempting. I've seen some people say, online, that's not a bad point, but I really wish Carlos would have tried to win the game. And I didn't see it like that at all. I thought everything he did was in context was to try and win that game. Obviously, there may have been a little bit behind it, not lose the game. He's not taking a centre back off and throwing them up front, or like Wagner put Heffley up front, sort of stuff like that. He's not doing stuff like that. But I thought everything he did was to try and win that game. And we'll move on. I think we should move on to. We have ignored our live YouTube panel for a little bit here, so sorry everybody online. Let's read out some comments, shall we, and see where see where people think. So let's have a look. So I've got a former Glory Football Shirts account here, which says, evening fellas, Derby fan in peace, supporting my mate John. I presume that means you, Johnny. So there you go. You've got supporters there. Terrier7N2 says, a great point versus Sheffield United and clean sheet. However, the subs at the end baffle me. You have Rhodes on the bench and yet he put Sorba up there. Seems he tried to hold on rather than go for a win. Dean Smith says, playing against 12 men is always bloody tough. Apparently the fourth official gave the decision and not the ref linesman, which would be really strange. Oliver Bell says, linesman goes to his ear, almost holding his mic, etc. But if the linesman sees the goalkeeper falling over, how does he miss Danny Ward being pulled over? Saw this from the upper tier of Lawrence Batley. And again, ref almost looks like he's heading back to the centre circle before linesman speaks to him over the radio. Johnny Goggs says something about the character of this side, that we kept Billy Sharp quiet for the first time in ages. Final ball missing, but very encouraging performance. I feel like I need to admit something. So I'm in the Championship Fantasy League, the Gaffer Fantasy Championship League, and I'm something like 7th at the minute, and I made a tactical substitution. I took out Adebayo from Fulham and put in Billy Sharp and made him captain this week because I just thought Billy Sharp always scores against Huddersfield Town. So, it serves me right, doesn't it, for being so negative. Let's go back. Bez5678 says, very enjoyable game. Ruffles and Russell slotted in very well. Ref was garbage. Richard Hookie says, yeah, was linesman. Referee was walking away until Sheffield players started moaning. Otherwise, great team effort. Russell and Ruffles outstanding players on the day. Terry7N2, Russell's reminds me of Billing, but with hunger and desire and better passing. Oh, I don't know about that. I thought Billing was a really good passer of a football. Bez5678, agree on not building him up too much. His obvious lack of pace is probably the reason he was released by Chelsea. Johnny Goggs again. Russell was excellent, to be fair. Great passing range and man of the match. Still seeing some fans who can't resist using Russell's performance to bash Scott High. Gets on my nerves no end. Enjoy him for his own sake. And the same goes for Lee Nicholls. A lot of people use that to bash Ryan Schofield. And the two lads have been nowhere near the field. So agree fully. Just enjoy the players playing. There's no need to then use that as a negative to slate somebody. It's really sort of strange behaviour to me. Is that E2S2 Rothery says, hey, best Huddersfield Town ref for this season, up the town. John Russell is a beast. Sorba is great as well. Dean Smith, Carlos needs enormous credit for his tactics for this game. Wasn't scared to drop players and also change things when needed. Folks still slating him all over social media, though. Not 100% sure why. And then ETS2 Rothery, hereby known as Rothery, I think. If we had a full Spanish team, would we win the league and we have a Spanish manager? Okay. Terrier7-2, Dean, it's the negativity. Imagine Sheffield United taking off Sharp and putting a defender on, taking Ward off and leaving Rhodes on the bench. So there's a little bit of conversation going on. Richard Oakes says, Sorba was good, but fans expect miracles. Personally, the only thing that let Karoma down was his decision-making in the final third. Yeah, that was the thing that really stood out for Josh Karoma, wasn't it? Is that, his effort was there, his tracking back was there. It's just when he cuts in from that left-hand side, he always looks to shoot, doesn't he? And he needs to really learn to go on the outside or lift his head a bit more. And, he did that last season. He was phenomenal, Josh Karoma. So hopefully it's not too long before we see that back. Coming towards the end now, Max says Tom Lee's excellent again. You know what? Tom Lee's, for me, is in my top 3 players of the year. And this is what I mean by bar setting and things like this. Tom Lee's has just been so reliable that I don't think anybody's noticing it anymore, or not as many people are noticing how good he is anymore, because you just expect it. It's like Lewis O'Brien. You just expect it because every week they're a 7 out of 10. And, Tom Lee's for me has been, one of the signings of the season for, he's up there, as one of the signings with Lee Nicholls. He has been superb, and Matty Pearson's done well, but Matty Pearson kind of flags up and down within games. But for me, Tom Lee's and his communication, and, you've got Lee Nicholls there, his communication's excellent. Lee Nicholls, Tom Lee's is excellent. Matty Pearson talks a good game. You've got a defence there which is really in tune with each other. And, again, we've said it many times, but really great signings. Okay, so he also says, summer signings been great, especially considering value for money. IT not even used yesterday, and we've still got Colwell and Andrew to come back. Johnny Goggs, I'd much rather Carlos was pragmatic and achieve the results we have this season than be naive and get pushed around and battered. Anyway, Ward's sub was preceded by an attacking sub, Ruffles for Sinani. Sinani for Ruffles. Coventry Terrier says, I thought it was such a bold decision to drop Toffolo, but I'm glad Carlos is trying to take more risks and rotate more often than he used to. And final ones are, Tom says, would have taken Russell off around the 60-minute mark. He was starting to tire and had a couple of breaks when he couldn't get back. I saw that similar as well. I had to take my little boy to football on Saturday morning, so I missed the first 10 minutes. I had to watch it on TV, and I thought Russell tired sort of towards it. He was still good, But I did think at that point, I was thinking maybe throw Eiting on for Russell, and you still have the same line-breaking pass, but a player who's maybe not quite as tired, but he was still excellent. And finally, Oliver Bell says other results went our way later on. Is Bryce Samba out for 3 games? No idea, mate. Right, so it was Andy's Man Club Day as well, Andy, wasn't it? Did you manage to? We've got here on our live thing, we've got our own logo at the bottom, Magic Rock, our sponsor, and then we've got Andy's Man Club next to it. And we don't always talk about Andy's Man Club, do we? It's one of those things whereby through Neil, we've always sort of championed Andy's Man Club and always wanted to, be involved and push it where possible. There are other things, there are other things out there. There's, my work, do things with men's mental health as well through Calm and other things. So, but Andy's Man Club are really sort of building up a great head of steam, and they're really putting so much effort in, aren't they, to help, every, blokes essentially just needing somewhere to sit and talk, because a lot of men don't talk about things. I'm bad for bottling things up, you know what I mean? And, sort of my dad passed away November last year, which, hit me really hard. And I never really spoke to anyone. I don't think anybody on the podcast knows this. I never spoke to really anybody outside my family about it. And it's just one of those things that men do, whereby, something hits you hard. And I think men in particular, like myself, digest things a lot more slowly than some people. So things slow burn, and I think all of a sudden it's like you've got something on level 3 on a pot, isn't it? It simmers away, doesn't it? And it's slowly simmering more and more, and then all of a sudden it's over the top, and then that's where it thinks. And Andy's Man Club, even if you don't think you need to go, and you just maybe need to talk to someone, you can sit there and listen. You can, you don't have to sort of stand up in front of everybody and tell your life story. You can go to your local club, you can sit and listen. You don't have to talk. But they're really good outlets for people, who need something to talk to. So, it was the club day, wasn't it, Andy? I think did you manage to get down to the little stall that they have there, by any chance?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Spoke to Neil, said hello to the lads. Actually, Pods turned up at the same time, so it was a bit of a Takes That Chance Pods sort of gathering. It's a fabulous organisation. I've been. Not very often, but I've found that the being listened to is a great thing, even if you don't have a lot on your plate. But it's also given me the perspective of seeing how other people are handling their situations, and gives you a little bit of faith. You're 100% right. Men are a little bit like I don't know whether this is a apocryphal analogy, whether it's true or not. But if you put a frog into a boiling pan of water, it'll jump out again. If you put a frog into a pan of water and then slowly heat it up, it'll stay in there, get comfortable, and then it'll obviously get seriously injured, burnt. And men are a little bit like that with their mental health. We just think, I'll just endure it, I'll just endure it. And the key thing for me is we've got to talk to people, whoever that might be, in those situations, because the support that's out there, particularly Andy's Man Club and other great organisations that like it, are just absolutely fantastic. And yeah, I couldn't speak highly enough of Neil and the rest of the guys at the organisation. I'll do whatever I can to share stuff on my social media that will support them, because they talk about getting it out for the one man. And one share, one like, one pass on to somebody else, you could help save that one man. Yeah, fantastic to see Neil again, and all power to them down there. It's a magnificent organisation.
Yeah, all the best to everyone involved. So so if anybody, don't suffer in silence. If you feel like you need to get something off your chest, and don't always feel that, there are going to be people there with terrible, harrowing stories, and that your problem is insignificant either. Everybody's different. If you need it, go along every Monday, aren't they? Every Monday evening, have a look at Andy's Man Club online, and you can even shoot Neil a message. He's always very happy to talk to people and spread the gospel. So that's Andy's Man Club. Keep doing the great work, guys, and we'll keep supporting you as well. So that's fantastic. So let's move on to the Preston game. So the Preston 0, Huddersfield Town 0. It's a bit dull, really, wasn't it? This game. There's for Town. There's not really a lot to say, is there? Let us know online what you think of the Preston game. For me, it was just really a 0-0, an attritional 0-0 scrap. Huddersfield don't do anything at Preston. We haven't even drawn at Preston since 2001. It's just one of those things. And someone sort of said to me online after I made a point, and they sort of said, "Well, what does it matter if you haven't done anything at for 20 years, etc.? It's all about the players on the day." And And it's like, well, yeah, it is. But I think psychologically, these runs sometimes do play a bit of a part, especially when everybody wraps around the players and goes, hey, lads, you better do all right today. We haven't won there for 50 years, I think it does sort of mentally play a little bit of a part. But Town are just a different beast out there this year. That's, a lot of people have said it, but that's a team that would have not rolled over, but would have been rolled over last season, or maybe the season before we'd have lost. But this is a real team of scrappers and fighters. Oliver Turton played. I thought Oliver Turton played quite well against Preston and was unlucky to find himself out of the team on Saturday. He wrapped around Matty Pearson like we were talking tactically earlier, and others dropped in. I thought the defence played well. Lee Nicholls came out with credit for 2 saves. These are the saves we were on about earlier from Preston, both straight at him. But it's the positioning again whereby he knows where to stand. But there was the only real thing to talk about is really the 2 Preston penalty shouts, aren't they? And both against Tom Lees. I was speaking to Dave Hartrick, and he described Tom Lees as a lucky rabbit's foot of a player this year. And I thought that was quite a good analogy because there's the blatant penalty against Stoke. Against Stoke we were very lucky. Josh Koroma should have been sent off, and it was 100% a penalty. Against Tom Lees. No question for me. These were questionable though. The 2 penalties. I don't think they were as cut and dried as some Preston fans were posting the video of the Emil Rees-Jacobsen. It's Emil Rees-Jacobsen, isn't it? The striker. They were posting that one and the other one, and they as Preston fans were 50-50 as to whether they were penalties. So that's without Huddersfield intervention. So I'm going to say that the first one for Tom Lees, his arm is in an unnatural position. It's a penalty, but you roll it back 15 seconds and there's a blatant foul on Sinani on halfway that's not given. So I'm less sympathetic because the referee should have given the first foul. But take that out of the equation. It is a penalty, isn't it? It's I know it's behind him, but it's classed as an unnatural position. It's a penalty. Probably got away slightly with it, Andy, didn't we? But the second one, we'll roll the second one in because there's not really a lot to talk about. The second one, Rees-Jacobsen, I think the slip takes him down more than any sort of slight contact. And one thing that kind of annoys me in football, it's got to this really silly stage now where everything's slowed down to, the nth degree. And you get this stage where they're looking for the slightest contact. If I brush past you in the street, Andy, and just, brush you barely feel it. Yet a footballer on a field in the Premier League and the Championship gets the same brush and they're rolling around on the ground. I know it's part of the game, but I still don't like it. And for me, it was the slip really that took Jacobsen down. I'm sure it's Jacobsen. I'm going to have to look that up. It's one of those where I'm kind of second guessing myself. But he went down from the slip more than the touch. For me, it's not a penalty, and the referee got that right. And Preston fans, like I say, were 50-50. Give us your views while I Google Emil Rees and find out and just see if I'm right if that is Jacobsen. Andy,
I can't really give you I can't give you any views because I couldn't start watching it at home because my Sky boxes weren't linking up, so I couldn't watch it.
It is Jacobsen.
So I got it fixed. Once I got it fixed, I've got a superstition that says if Town are doing okay, I cannot change the way that I'm interacting with the game, and I was interacting with it by keeping it up on Twitter. So that point is entirely down to me not turning the telly on to watch the last 30 minutes when my Sky boxes got fixed. 100%.
Mate,
100%.
The sacrifices you make for this football club are phenomenal, honestly, Andy.
Yeah.
All about.
I'm just amazing.
Johnny, taking Andy's sacrifice out of this, tell us about your view as well. Andy, sorry if I've cut you off there before you were making a point. But
that's all right. I can't tell you anything because I didn't watch it. So
that's all right.
Well,
cutting edge analysis as always on Andy Takes That Chance. But go on, Johnny. You take.
It's a local game for me, so I was there, and I've got a similar superstition. I might have left to get an early night because it was a game for the purists, like you say. I think Town defended really well and probably warranted the point. I agree with you. I think the first penalty was a penalty by the letter of the law. The second one, I think it depends what angle you look at. Like you say, when you really analyse it, there's a picture that you can see where Lee's foot is on top of the Preston players. Some saying it's a stamp. It's not a stamp. It's really hard. I think the slip is what convinces the referee that it's not a penalty. The Preston fans certainly didn't agree. My gut instinct from the other side of the ground was it was a pen, and it felt very fortunate the ref didn't blow his whistle. like you said, I agree. Maybe they don't even out over the course of the season, and certainly over the course of Town's previous seasons. But certainly, I think that was a potentially bit of calm in that game that we spent in the Sheffield United game. But yeah, I can see why. If I flip it around, I can see from a Preston side, if it was a Town player who had the other way around, I probably would have been a bit annoyed. Really, I probably can see why Preston fans were aggrieved either side. But just going back to your point around the chances that Preston had again, I thought Nicholls was outstanding. The chance in the first half where Johnson crosses it, and Nicholls, I think Chad Evans has a chance and it's right at him. It's right at him because he moves across into that position. He reads that before anyone else in that field. Probably other than Chad Evans and Johnson know where that ball's going, and he makes an exceptional save. And he does similar towards the end of the second half. And it just further embeds how much of an important player is, because we've arguably got 2 points there. We probably should have got more, but we've got 2 points that are really directly down to not directly, wholly down to one player, but significant impact from one player, which is Lee Nicholls. I thought when he was called upon, he was excellent in the Preston game. I thought Turton was really good as well. I thought Turton link play, he's getting quicker, 1-2s and taking the ball around and actually having a bit of an outlet. I think it was more the offensive players that lacked a bit of conviction. A few passes went astray. There was some really strange decision making from offensive players.
Holmes and Sinani had a bit of a shocker, didn't they? Really,
were cold for the Sheffield United game, yeah, and just it didn't quite click. And I think that's one of those classic situations where I think in the dressing room, the back 4-5, the keeper, are probably thinking, well, we did our job and more, and the problem was more further up the pitch. I think where it just didn't quite work, which is a shame, because I think we did enough to give ourselves the option to get something out of that game.
Si?
There's not much to be said that hasn't been said already, really. It's not one that's going to leave long in their memory, that's for sure.
It's one of those where you get... It's one of those, Si, isn't it? It's one of those where you think no one's going to remember it at the end of the season, but if we get in the top 6, it's a really important one, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, and it's definitely very much a point gained. Kind of Preston, is it 1969 where we last won there? We kind of... History suggests we always struggle at that ground, and you kind of even thought more so of it being a midweek fixture and such. And we certainly didn't deserve anything more than a point from the game, but a good point nevertheless. I think kind of the guys summed it up well. We were very good defensively, but offered very, very little kind of going forward. Struggled to really kind of dictate the game and dictate any tempo in the game, but I won't want to watch it every week, that's for sure.
Ben Whiteman, by the way, Ben Whiteman's a really good player. It was linked with us, wasn't it? Ben Whiteman when he was at Doncaster, and I thought he had a really good game for Preston. And he's Preston haven't got a bad side there. They remind me a little bit of ourselves in some ways. It's probably just not clicked as much for them, but I thought Preston...
They really struggled at the start of the season, didn't they? I think Frankie McAvoy was the manager.
Yeah, they've got a really good manager now, haven't they? Interesting fun fact is Ryan Lowe was in the frame for our job when Lee Clark left. So there you go. But that was a long time ago. But he's continuing to improve his Ryan Lowe, and he's doing a good job at Preston. But he's definitely one to keep an eye on, and so Preston, I think. So I generally don't really have much to say on the Preston game other than that it was a tough watch. But sometimes, I'm not that bothered that if I'm very much ends justify the means, and Pos is the same as well. The ends justify the means. I don't mind that it's crap to watch if we get something, whereas those are the real games whereby if it's really bad to watch and you lose in the last minute, you're absolutely seething for weeks on end, aren't you? That you've wasted 90 minutes watching that. But the fact that we didn't lose and we went somewhere where we generally find it quite tough and got something, I came away quite pleased. I'm not sure. So there's a couple of points that I've got after this, and just to wrap up the podcast in many ways, is that there are 3 points that I want you to sort of think about, and people online as well, get involved with this as well. The first question really is: are Town struggling a bit in the final third again? We've seen Sorba play quite well, but Danny Ward's maybe dried up last couple of weeks in terms of goals. He had a bit of a purple patch. He's still playing well, but not really getting chances. Are we struggling a bit final third again? Maybe something needs to change. And is that a case of, do we need Tino Angerin in as soon as possible for him, and especially for him to hit the ground running, because he's going to be a really interesting option. But as far as I know, Chelsea haven't released him yet to even train with us, so that is obviously not going to happen, in the next week. Levi Colwell, I think, is going to train with us next week, according to Carlos, I think his pre-match. And after 7 draws in 12 unbeaten league games, I think we probably need to put a run of wins together now to make sure, I'm looking top 6. You can kind of say if we want to finish mid-table, everything's fine. But if we want to hit the top 6, we've got Fulham, Cardiff, Birmingham and Peterborough on the horizon. And I think we probably need to look at winning 2 or 3 of these, to sort of cement that, because this is a little run. Fulham, obviously, is going to be very difficult. And if we get pasted at Fulham, Andy, everyone's just going to go, yeah, always happens, never mind, next game. But Cardiff, Birmingham, who are slightly picking up now, Janino Bakuna's doing well there, and Peterborough, these are really now, we've talked about acid tests. This is now sort of getting to an area whereby we really need to perhaps, like you say, be a bit more attacking, Andy, and make sure we get, 3 points over the line, definitely in the Cardiff and Peterborough games, I would think. So, our town struggling in the final third. Is Tino Angerin the answer to that when he comes back? And this run, is this the acid test, or are we okay as we are? There we go.
Yes, don't know. Let's not die wondering. For me, we need to string some wins together. Staying unbeaten is no good. Win one, lose one till the end of the season will get us in the playoffs pretty much. Angerin, I don't know enough about him. I'm not a football badger particularly, so hopefully he'll give us an extra spark because Danny Ward's running his blood to water up front, but we need something else up there with him to help him to either come on and take his place or supply him in a different way. Well, let's go. Like I said already, let's just go for it and see what happens. We've got nothing to lose now. I just want us to hammer somebody once. I know we beat Reading early doors 4-0. I want another one of them. I think we'll just need to release the shackles a little bit. Now, I can't see that coming in the next few games. Maybe, fingers crossed, Peterborough at home. That would be nice. Might say that would be nice. But that don't know.
Johnny, Si, anyone want to dive in?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the games are there. I think the Fulham game, it's not a free hit like the Bournemouth game last season, because that didn't go very well, and the subsequent games after that didn't go very well. But I think Cardiff, Birmingham, Peterborough, if we're serious, those are games that you've got to go for. And I think if we are 0-0, 1-1 with 20 minutes to go, then like Andy says, it's got to be a mindset that we're going for 3 points. If we lose, fair enough. But I think if we really go for it, we've got enough to beat these teams. I think, it's like coming from Chelsea. Like I said, the YouTube video's probably had an extra 2,000 or 3,000 hits since he's been linked with us. He's got quite a bit of pressure on his shoulders before he's even put on a town shirt, but for all accounts, he's got something special. Something I've thought, and it's a bit left field, and again, there's probably a whole line of tacticians who might kind of shoot me down here, but I really think Rhodes and Ward together could really do something. I know it's a whole tactical shift there, but it kind of reminds me of Rhodes and Novak. You've got someone who'll just run and run and run. He's got quality, but will work hard. And Rhodes, even now, can finish. I mean, he will. And if you give him game time and put him in front of goal enough times, he's always going to be a better finisher than Danny Ward. And that's not a slight on Danny Ward, the different players. But maybe looking to try and engineer that, at least for a final half hour together, I think they could really actually work well. Like I say, Corbrand's where he is because of a reason. I'm sat here for a reason, but I don't know. I think there's enough in that squad to maybe be a bit more attacking, and like I say, go for games. If we've got 50 points, we're not going down. And I think, like you say, I'd rather die trying than start not knowing what might have been. So I completely agree with Andy on that one.
I think for me, I agree with everything the guys have said. We've surpassed all expectations, and I think Sorba started today said we're on 50 points now, which is one more than we got the entirety of last season. So actually, anything from here on in is a bit of a bonus. I certainly kind of thought we'd struggle if I go back to kind of July, August time. I'm probably a little bit less in the camp of shit or bust. I still think there's a lot of football to be played, actually. I think kind of we've still got, 16 games left remaining this season. The league is a funny old league. Barnsley beat QPR, didn't they, kind of the weekend, which was kind of a crazy result that none of us saw us coming. And actually,
good one, though.
If we draw 2 or 3 or 4 of the next 4 games, 2 or 3 of the next 4 games, sorry, then actually I still think we're thereabouts. I don't think we need to necessarily go gung-ho and risk losing, kind of trying to chase a winner. I still think there's quite a bit of football to be played and a few more twists and turns. So, yeah, hold the nerves. That's what I'd say.
Get your men off the boundary edge. Get him in the slit.
It's got a balance.
Come on, let's go for it. What Levi Colvin at the back, Russell in midfield, and everybody else up front. Let's just let's go for it.
I agree with Si in some ways. I think I'm interested to see how Ward and Rhodes would do up front together. When we've gone 4-4-2, Rhodes has looked really lively, hasn't he, against Blackpool and Derby, but both of them were down to 10 men at the time, so I could see why we could afford that. It's interesting. 4-4-2 for me is a system which was invented for the long ball, for the knockdowns and, the percentages, of pushing high, getting high. 3-5-2 is another possibility, definitely. That's probably the one that you would look to. We usually go with the 3-4-3 out, Carlos likes that 5-4-1 out of possession, so I'm not Danny Ward would then have to, it's almost like, I don't know if you guys can remember when we used to have Chris Powell as manager and he would play Grant Holt and Naki Wells up front, but Grant Holt used to have to sprint 50 yards to the left wing.
Remember it, Matt, to be honest.
Well, Grant Holt used to have to sprint 50 yards to the left wing to get into shape, out of possession. It was so farcical. Naki Wells, the quicker man, was left up front on his own. It was bizarre. But, I'm just wondering how Carlos isn't going to deviate from that defensive shape. So I'm just wondering how, Danny Ward might drop, like Jonathan Hogg's dropped, in that 5-4-1, you could potentially drop Danny Ward back. I think I'm with Si. I think, see how we're going. For me, the weakness at the minute for us, the reason why I mentioned Tino Anjorin is that wide left role. Dwayne Holmes has put in some good performances, but he's not really a left winger. I thought Dwayne looked a lot more at home against Barnsley as a number 8. That's Dwayne's strength, in the middle, pushing with the ball. He's got a lot more options. So for me, Tino Anjorin is huge. If he hits the ground running and he's as good as what they say at Chelsea and, the Chelsea fans, then this is a real chance. Tino, Danny Ward and, Sorba as your front three. It brings a different dynamic and that excites me. He could just be that little spark, that little magic dust that we need just to get, a 0-0 at Preston, a 1-0, where he cuts inside and, and does something. So I'm pinning way too much on a 21-year-old kid from Chelsea who's barely played in English football, but for me, that's where I'm clinging to and hoping that he's in as soon as possible. And another interesting thing, Andy, you mentioned Levi Colwill and, what happens, in terms of Town's formation, Carlos has kind of slowly gone back to a 4. Levi Colwill comes back in. How does he replace Lees or Pearson at the minute? That's another interesting one because against Preston, I thought we really missed Levi. His passing out from the back to get us, into the next third was really missed. But on Saturday, you look at that and you think, where does Levi Colwill fit into this? That's really, really difficult. But it's, like Johnny says, this is why we're sat here and Carlos has, got these problems. So there's a lot of interesting things on coming up for me in terms of that. But yeah, so let's see what guys have been saying online about the Preston goal and then we'll Preston game, and then we'll wrap a few things up. Bez says first is a penalty, second isn't, which I think agrees with us guys. Dean Smith says a missed opportunity. Preston weren't very good and were there for the taking, but we had too many players off form on the night. Holmes and Sinani were shocking, meaning that Ward was very isolated up top. Richard Hookie says P&E just a good point away from home. I think that pretty much sums it up and why we struggled so much to talk about it. Leo says Karoma and Sinani's form could cost us at the end of the season. They both need to up their game. I think maybe that's why I'm, so big on Tino Anjorin coming in and hope, for me, it's that sort of slot on the left, which is the area where you're looking at. Adam Cottrell says, thought we were poor overall against Preston and were lucky to come away with a point. Thought we were very good against Sheffield United and were very unlucky not to win. The ref had a stinker in both. And then says Anjorin will hopefully be the missing link in the final third. Leo says Tino and Colwill both still at Chelsea, which is not what we want to hear. Adam Cottrell says we need Ward to score more constantly as well. He generally goes 4 or 5 games without scoring, which is true, but I can't really think of a chance Danny Ward's had where you think, Danny Ward should be hitting the back of the net. It's I think it goes hand in hand with the creativity for him as well. And the final comments are Richard Hookie says we will batter Fulham 3-2. So there you go, Andy. There's one for you. Andy's going to the game, so hopefully Andy brings us luck. He doesn't usually do Andy at away games. So
no, I've never. I don't think I've ever seen Town win away. So
that's just what we want to hear. Just what we want to hear. and then Max says finally he'd like to see.
I'm sure there's a matinee you can catch on Saturday afternoon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A musical on Saturday afternoon. Yeah.
Max says would like to see this 4-3-3: Nicholls, Ruffles, Levi, Lees, Pippa, Hogg, Lewis O'Brien, Eiting, Angelin Ward, Thomas. Then I reckon the playoffs could be interesting. Yeah, it definitely could be. So I think the good thing is Cozzy said this before January. He said a couple of times that when he looks at our bench, he just goes, well, what's Carlos going to do here? He's got absolutely nothing there to change a game with. But now, we've potentially got, now we've got players on the bench, whereby he's got opportunities. Daniel Sinani was quite key at one point, but all of a sudden now he's probably going to find himself on the bench a fair bit more. He's an interesting player. I think he's frustrating. He has one really good game in 4 for me. So we need to see a little bit more consistency with Sinani. But, the effort's there. It's just, it's that sort of things don't quite click, do they, on a basis. And I understand it's a difficult role for Sinani because he has got to sort of float around and look for things rather than have a specific job. I think it's almost like the old German Raumdata, isn't it? Or space investigator, as it translates to, whereby he's got to go and make things happen. And it is a more difficult role whereby you can drift out of the game. So I do have some sympathy on that one. But, we've got options. It's going to be interesting, and hopefully we're going to beat Fulham as well. But just to wrap things up, Kieran Phillips, what a lad! Went down to Valley Parade. I've seen the photos. It looks about 3,000 there, but Bradford have announced 15,000. Standard fare. Not that we're perfect on that score by any chance, but hey, it did look a bit sparse down there at the at Death Valley. But Kieran Phillips, nice goal. Good to see him doing well. Brahima Diarra got another assist as well for Harrogate. So Diarra's become a real favourite down at Harrogate as well. Romany Critchlow has found himself on the bench the last 3 games at Plymouth, so I don't know if there'll be a couple of concerns that he's not really getting any games down there. But Plymouth are doing well, so maybe he's going to have to bide his time. And Roman Edmonds-Green possibly injured at the minute because he didn't play in the, I'm going to call it a derby. What was really interesting, Andy, you live Barnsley, sort of Sheffield-ish way, don't you? So Penistone, that sort of way.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Sheffield. This made me laugh really because I refer to Sheffield Wednesday as Leeds Light. They've got this sort of superiority complex, that similar sort of thing. And I saw their Twitter account said getting ready, something along the lines of paraphrasing, but getting ready for the derby against Rotherham. And a lot of them underneath were like, "That's not a derby, not a derby, not a derby, not a derby." It's all things, and it's like, and I saw something say this can't be a derby because Rotherham is a different place, so therefore you have to be in the same city to be a derby. And I just thought that's a load of rubbish. That it's just something to finish on. But yeah, so is it a derby? If you don't belong to the same city, I think so.
Of course it is.
Yeah,
of course it is.
Sheffield.
Of course it is.
Bunch of wallopers. Anyway, Carlos as well, linked with Leeds United. If Bielsa leaves end of the season, I genuinely don't see this happening at all, unless Leeds get relegated, but which is a long shot. I generally don't see that. Leeds, they've for me, their owners have generally got the head in the clouds a little bit. They're talking about Europe. They're talking about, when Bielsa came, he said, "Oh, by the way, Bielsa was my third choice. Ancelotti was the first, and I can't remember who was the second, but it was like Allegri or something." And you just think, what on earth? So I just do not see them going, do you know what? We were looking at Allegri, Ancelotti, Marcelo Bielsa. Oh, by the way, we're going to get Carlos Corberán from the division below. I just don't see them thinking that way because they tend to sort of look up rather than down, don't they? So I don't think there's anything to worry about there. Or if you're a couple of different Huddersfield Town fans, I don't think there's anything to celebrate there either. So, I don't see that, guys. Don't know what you guys think, but that's the last point I've got on this before we wrap up for the credits. So, speaketh now or forever hold your peace, and we'll wrap the episode up. Nobody's speaking. Nobody's speaking.
I'd be inclined to agree myself.
Can't see it myself.
No, I can't see it.
No,
I think, I think the San Francisco 49ers will want someone a bit more of a name for the wrong reasons.
Yeah,
I actually think he'd be a good appointment, but we'll keep that under the radar.
Yeah, I just don't see it fitted. The pieces don't really fit, do they? So I don't think there's anything to worry about for Huddersfield fans. And I think if they did come knocking, I actually think Carlos potentially might knock them back. He's a very different. I thought and one thing we've not mentioned actually is Carlos's post-match interview, which is on Sky as well. Against Sheffield United, and I thought it was really good. I know people don't always like a Carlos interview because he's got a thick, Spanish accent, and it's often difficult to understand. But he was given several opportunities to wade in on the referee, and he didn't, and he just chose, and he sort of said, "There's nothing we can do about the referee's decision. We've just got to get on with the game." And if we don't talk about the referee's decision, we're half a podcast down, so we have to, otherwise we're here for 10 minutes. But I thought Carlos really handled himself with dignity in that post-match interview, and for me, Carlos just keeps, in terms of his notoriety, just keeps stepping up bit by bit and showing himself to be, a class act really. And I think he, last season was obviously hell in many ways, but I just think Carlos constantly is just like Jonny says, going under the radar, but bit by bit he's showing himself to be a really decent, classy operator, and I hope he's here next season as well. So keep up the good work, Carlos, and thank you very much, guys, for coming online. Thank you to everybody who's joined us. The last one was Adam Cottrell says Diarra's going to be massive for us in the coming years. Big talent he is, and he's doing well at 18 years old in League Two as well. So that's a really exciting one. Thanks, Jonny, for coming on as well for your debut. As debuts went, pretty good, So we may see you back before too long. Thank you, everybody online.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much online. As I struggle to press the right buttons, this is why I'm digging this out for longer. But yeah, thanks to everybody online, and we'll be back next Sunday evening.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. They're a team of renown, and they're the pride of the town, and the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.